Good morning, friends. So it's time to start putting our Alebrije together. To be ready for this step, you should have finished at least 4 sheets of texture paper, whether you did those in class with the texture rubbing plates or you did those at home using found textures around your house and outside. You can also create pattern papers. We did all those awesome Zentangle and line and shape patterns last week. And when we look at the Alebrijes, we certainly see that they're pattern filled. So you can also take a piece of paper and create patterns across that paper as well, doing a repetition of lines or shapes to fill the space. And then you can use both the texture rubbing papers as well as your pattern papers to create each individual portion of your Alebrije. Before we get started on our Alebrije, let's talk about all the supplies that we need. You'll need the 1 piece of black construction paper to be your background for your Alebrije. All of our bright color construction papers are going to pop right off the black background. Then you'll need your construction paper that you've decorated. You're going to need your scissors. You're going to need your glue. You're also going to need a pencil to help you to draw the shapes on your individual pieces. And you'll need your sketchbook. You'll need the Alebrije design that you have finished to guide your work. So here's my basic guy here that I sketched on my paper. I even kind of played around with some pattern ideas, and I tried to incorporate lots of different animal types in my piece as well. Before you get started though, let's talk about your scissors. It's an important reminder that we're using our scissors safely, especially at home, and that we're keeping them in a safe space away from younger siblings and pets. You need to remember that using your scissors are only for paper. I shouldn't see you cut anything else with your scissors. So in art, your scissors are only for cutting your paper, not your hair, not your clothes, not yourself, not your siblings. Also, when you're not cutting with your scissors, they should be closed. They shouldn't be left open like this. Obviously, these are the sharp edges, so keeping them closed helps to keep them safe. They should only be open when we're cutting with them. Now, remember how to hold them, pass them, and carry them safely is by wrapping your hand around the edge. Obviously, they're closed. That way, if you were to fall, you wouldn't have this point out, right? Common sense. When we're cutting with our scissors, we remember that our helper hand has an important job. That's the hand that's not cutting. The helper hand is supposed to hold your paper still, and it's going to help turn it. So when your hand is cutting, your thumb is in the small hole, the rest of your fingers are in the other, and all it does is lift your thumb and close it. You shouldn't have to angle and turn like this at all. It should be straight ahead, and then your helper hand's going to turn the paper while you cut. Okay? Another important thing is that when you're cutting, you're always cutting pointing away from you. You shouldn't ever be cutting back towards yourself. So as you're working, just remember, if you get to a point where there's a lot of extra paper, just kind of snip it off where there's extras to make it easier for you to cut. And before you start cutting, draw out some guidelines. It's way easier to cut into a shape when you've given yourself a line to cut on. After you finish cutting, any pieces that are a little bit big, so I cut one little piece out of here, I should save this paper. I can probably use this for another piece. But if you have small little slivers, that should definitely go into the trash can. Remember that when you're working at home, you're responsible for maintaining your space, just as you're responsible for maintaining your space in the art room or the classroom. You should always put all of your materials away when you're finished, and you should keep track of them and clean up your workspace. And make sure that you're working in a space that's okay to get a little bit dirty as long as you're willing to clean up the mess afterwards. So don't Don't get a very messy project started on a nice tablecloth table. Make sure you ask the adult in your home, where's the best place for you to do an art project? This art project shouldn't be very messy, except that we will have some glue that we're using, and you'll have a lot of paper scraps probably that you'll be responsible for making sure that you clean up. All right, let's get started creating our Alebrije. Okay, I have my supplies here and I'm ready to go. I have my drawing as my reference sheet. I have my papers. I have my black background for when I'm finally ready to glue everything down. I have an extra piece of scrap paper, and maybe you might want to use a piece of paper from your sketchbook to create maybe the face on a white piece of paper. Please don't use a project paper, but you could draw it in your sketchbook kind of bigger, or use a piece of copy paper that maybe you have around your house. So I'm going to actually start with my face because it's going to help me figure out the size of everything else. I love the way that this kind of lion or cat face turned out. So I'm starting with a circle, and then two of these almond or kind of football shaped eyes. Then another circle inside. From the corner of the eyes, I'm going to bring it down into my nose. Okay, I think that turned out pretty well. So this is going to be my face, and I'll probably go back and color, or maybe use some markers to darken that up. So this is going to be the first piece that I cut out here. You can see my helper hand is turning my paper. My scissors really don't go anywhere. They keep kind of cutting straight ahead, and I use my helper hand to make sure that those scissors are then cutting along the line that I drew. And I can set this off to the side. Okay, so now that I have this piece, it'll allow me to help measure out. The next thing I'm going to do is this crazy lion hair. This big mane for my Alebrije. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to break your Alebrije into its different sections or segments, each of the different shapes you might need to create. Use your sketch as a guideline for what each of those pieces should look like. See how my helper hand is working to turn this paper back and forth? And my scissors really aren't going anywhere. That's what a helper hand is for, making it way more simple to do the work. Okay, my scraps out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and glue my face down. Let's see, I just used a piece of scrap paper I had laying around. And okay, so I started here because this is going to help me reference how big everything else should be, and I'm going to kind of lay it out as I go. Let's see, now it's probably time for the body. Now your body shape and all the shapes of your pieces are probably going to end up a little bit different from your sketch, and that's okay. Just do your best. That's why we draw it out first. That way you can still make a change if you don't like the way that it's looking. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead here. You should have the basics. Looking at your sketch, drawing the different segments, cutting them out, and kind of laying them down. I only glued the head on to the back, but I'm going to wait to glue everything else before I glue it on my black paper. I want to have all the different pieces. That way I can really make sure I have everything I need and that I like the way that everything looks before I glue it down. So I'll go ahead and start setting this stuff out of the way onto my final paper. I'm going to hop off here because I'm going to keep cutting, and I'll come back to show you how it all fits together. Okay, I have each little piece ready to go. And so then I can start with the piece that's going to be at the bottom. So probably start with the body is probably the good place to start. Remember, with your glue, you want to trace the outline. And if it's a bigger section, this is a little bit bigger, I'll put a little X in the middle to make sure I have enough in the middle to hold it down. A lot of your smaller pieces would just kind of need a line or so through the middle. Okay, so before that gets too glued down, I want to glue my little back leg here. So you can see just kind of a line down the middle. So I want it to be a little bit underneath because that's behind my animal. This is the one that's in front. So I'll go ahead and glue that down. You can see some pattern pieces that were drawn, lots of texture pieces that were rubbed. I'd love to see a combination of the two, but it's up to you. What are the pieces that you practiced that turned out the best for you? Which are the ones that you like the most? Those are the ones that you should use. Okay, and now my wings. It's okay if your stuff goes off your paper a little bit. Okay, I think that kind of makes it look even cooler. Okay, I think I want one more thing. Kind of a small piece. Oh, and I see maybe one more spot. I might add one more detail after this. So after you get your bulk of your stuff glued down, take a look at your piece. Do you see any spaces where you could add a few more details? That's what I'm looking at right now. And remember the fire element. A lot of forked tongues. So that's what I'm giving my Alebrije, a forked tongue sticking out there. I've got some bat wings. I've got kind of a squirrel tail and some reptile feet, some paws, a lion head. And I think the last little thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a couple circles to be the eyeballs for my piece here. And I think that'll be the last detail I'll choose to add. So my Alebrije is about finished, and I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. It's so fun working with all different types of colors and textures and patterns in our work. It makes it really bright and fun. I'll glue those guys down. I can't wait to see your final piece. Make sure that you bring it to class with you the first day that you come back next week, or turn it in on Artsonia. Happy Alebrije making!